Okay, welcome to this month's edition of the Aperitif Concerts. My name is Stacy Dyson, and I am the head and the lead poet for Tesoro, which is an international women's network of poets, storytellers, songwriters. Our mission being to create, protect, and maintain safe spaces for women who work in words to do their work. I say this every week. If you go back and look at the YouTubes, I say it every week. We are beyond blessed to have the feature that we have today, the woman that we're going to be talking to. I'm not going to introduce her. I'm going to let her introduce herself. I will say that she is one of our more recent Tesoro members and that we are inordinately glad. And as I say, inordinately blessed to have her. Shannon, honey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So go on and tell us who you are.
Ooh, that's a big question. I don't know who I am. No, I do.
Fake it till you make it, babe.
That's right. No, I consider myself to be an intuitive visual artist and poet. I'm a healer. I am a trauma therapist, and a lot of how I make sense of the world and help others make sense of the world is through art. Um, so yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, yeah, that's enough for now.
That's not right. Well, we may or may not get into it later. We'll see how this shakes out. So I'm going to start the interview the way I start all of our aperitif interviews. And you may interpret this however it is you want and answer it however suits you. Why poetry and why now?
I have been writing poetry since I was a child. I can't imagine not using poetry as a way to make sense of the world. I'm also bilingual, and so for me, I've always just been fascinated with just pushing words to, I don't know, as far as I can push them and create new meaning out of, putting words in different juxtapositions that are not necessarily expected. So like I'm fascinated with like E. Cummings, for example, and just the way he pushed language. Why now? I'm at a point where I've gone from using poetry as sort of an artistic form just to explore for myself to needing to use it to be authentic in the world. I have gotten to the point where I know my words are important and valuable and I want to share them. So whereas poetry used to be very private for me, I am much more interested in getting it out there and interacting with people through language.
Cool. You and I have spoken in the past about places that you've been and places that you've worked. And you just mentioned now that you were multilingual. Can you tell us a little bit about that background?
Yeah, so I actually I'm wearing a Guatemalan woven shirt now, representing my family. My children were born in Guatemala. My husband is Guatemalan and Mexican. I have lived and worked in post-war Salvador and in post-war Guatemala. I've also lived in Italy briefly. Um, and so I'm fluent in Spanish and English, and I have picked up bits and pieces of um, 5 different Mayan languages. Have also learned Italian and French, though I don't speak them fluently. But again, I'm fascinated with playing around with language, and everything I do with the intention of bringing human rights to the forefront and dignity and respect. That's the work that I was doing in other countries, and that's the work I continue to do. I work in a decolonized way. Um, in Guatemala, I learned quite a bit from living with indigenous people and having them teach me other ways of looking at the world and reflecting in different ways that I don't know, the world just made more sense.
Sometimes it takes another lens. Absolutely.
It does.
What is the what is it that drives your writing? What's the jump off point, or is there one?
So I cannot write if you ask me to sit down and write. It won't happen. It's very intuitive. It is when there's an emotion that needs to come out in some way, or a message or a story. In Guatemala, working with survivors of genocide, the one thing that people, and particularly women, kept saying over and over, because is tell our stories, remember us, honor us by never forgetting. And I worked in a project that was called the recovery of historic memory, right? So we were doing mental health through that lens of human rights and recovering historic memories so that we can honor the dignity of all people, right? And to also capture history through the lens of people who were otherwise marginalized, silenced, killed, and disappeared, right? And so poetry comes at odd moments. It's almost always a one draft thing. I rarely go back and do much with it. It comes out as it comes out, and that's usually just how it is. And I never know what's going to come out till I finish it. Same with my drawing.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's something I didn't know anything about. Talk to us about that.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, so actually, a lot of the ways the poetry started to come back out in 2013 is I started drawing. I started drawing as part of my healing process of coming back to the United States from Guatemala. We did not want to leave. We wouldn't have left if we had had a choice. We were forced to leave. We were on a hit list, so our lives were in danger, and our lives had been in danger many times. But we had two small children, and so that was the point where we said, "Yeah, that's we need to go." So, as part of my honoring the stories of Guatemala, right, and trying to make sense of moving between cultures and moving back to a place that I had never planned to live again, I started drawing. And it was very heavily influenced by the bright patterns and colors of the weavings, and all of which in Guatemala are very symbolic, right, and are tied to cosmovision. Well, so as I started to get into drawing, I got to a point where my drawings weren't finished unless there were words. And so again, I never knew what words were going to show up at the end of the drawing, but that was always the last part of the drawing. And then I'd be done with it and I could move on, and I could give the drawing away or sell it or whatever. I don't have any attachment to it once it's done. For me, it's about that process of being in that moment. So, yeah.
And I understand that because I can only write when lightning strikes. I am
Mm-hmm.
not sit down in between 9 and 1 and scribble away. So I
No,
get
can't
it.
do that.
What about music? What influence, if any, does music play in what it is you
So,
do?
well, I married a musician. So
So a little tiny bit of influence, okay?
a little tiny bit.
Little bit, okay.
I married to it. Yeah, my husband is in 6 different bands. So music and drumming in particular is a big part of my life. I will use music to sort of set the stage. When I'm going to either draw or write, I will pick out something, and that's also just part of the going with it. I cannot play any instruments myself. I can't really sing. I actually just started music therapy to hopefully see if there's something there. Because both,
Everybody sings. It's about
well,
finding your
yes,
level. That's all.
right, yes, my level is pretty average, especially if you compare it to the poetry and the writing. But it it is important, it is, I like sounds, I'm very visual and auditory, right? So for me, poetry sort of takes that, it's what I can do with the words, right? So in a way, I guess it is sort of like writing the lyrics without necessarily having the music. Um, but yeah, both my children are also very musical and like my husband, self-taught and just sort of are. We went to an open mic and my 14-year-old just sat down and just played this spontaneous thing on the piano that blew everybody away. They're like, wow, how long, have they been practicing? I said, we've never heard our child play like that ever. Like, don't know. So, yeah.
So that brings up, because there's the ongoing argument. There's the school that says poetry and music are two completely different camps. And then there's the line of thought that says they're the same thing. So I'm curious to know which side of that you fall on.
I believe that there are some differences, but I also believe that there is a musicality just in the rhythm of the word. And so maybe it's more percussive than anything else, but I wouldn't separate it out necessarily. And I'm a kind of a rebel that way. So I'll just tell you my very first art show that I ever had was called The Music of the Pigments. And actually I immediately got pushback in the paper, right, by somebody who was reviewing the show and said, I don't know how pigments can have music, but Shannon seems to think that they're
Okay, this is somebody who should not be writing about art shows, then, quite honestly. But, um, so you've got the music and the artwork and the poetry. What's down the road?
I don't know. I mean, poetry is where I really want to stay. I'm art is sort of on hold right now. I've done a few drawings. There's one actually kind of behind me that I think I'm going to turn into a tattoo. But I know it's
Okay.
probably really hard to see until you put me full screen. But I'm really happy with just exploring language. And it's interesting as I have more fully lived in a bilingual world, the need to swap out, the right word, which may not be in, English necessarily, but it's the one that captures the essence. And so I'm fascinated with um yeah, just that global need for expressing emotion and connecting through um words that actually capture the essence of what you're trying to say, not the translation of it, which is interesting because I am a simultaneous um, translator too. So I do know how to do that very well, but there's often something missing, right? And so that's that sort of bilingual poetry is kind of where I've landed because I live in a bilingual family, right? So I think that's poetry is where I kind of want to stay for a while.
Uh, So we're a minute early, if that's okay. You clearly have a lot to say to us poetically, so I'm going to turn you loose 45 seconds early.
Okay.
Before we get you started, let me just do a little housekeeping here. Um, for the folks who are in the audience, first of all, thank you for being there. If you want to contribute to what's going on, to our flow, then you go to PayPal, go to poetswind@hotmail.com. I'll put that in the chat. 90% of anything that's donated tonight goes to the artist because artists need to get paid. 10% comes back to Tesoro so that we can keep doing shows like this. So I will put that information in the chat. Shannon, you have 30 minutes. Do you, boo?
Okay. So let me pull up. Pull up so that I can see them with my readers. All right. So this first one is called Sensations. It's an older one, but I just kind of like it. Sensations. Such a simple question asked by my son. Why does your heart feel all warm and different when you speak the truth about what you really love? I don't know. I'm still getting used to that feeling, even after 4 decades in the world, trying to settle in and enjoy it. He's just past that half-decade mark, my son, and he already pays attention. I know I have felt that same thing many times, except that it was always overshadowed by the panic that set in when I was told not to get too worked up. And so I still hold back about speaking the truth about the things I really love. It's still scary for me, and I can't just bask in that warmth. I focus on the emptiness of when that sensation fades, because it does. And the vice grip of heaviness. The pain is what catches my breath. It's what I feel, what I pay attention to. Not like my son, who sighs happily and snuggles even closer, enjoying that sensation. All right, so this one, I need to expand my screen so that I can actually read it. So this is a newer one, and it is called Nothing. You erase my humanity, gaslight the fuck out of me, pin me down to mess with me. Never need to put fist to face, 'cause you already own me. You take all away that is precious to me and fill my head with insanity. Laughing, touching, penis in the face, rubbing, it's all my fault 'cause I'm nothing. Yeah, you made that clear. I'm nothing. I won't fulfill your fantasies 'cause I'm wasted space and a wannabe, just a fat bitch excuse abuse 'cause I know how to provoke. Yeah, it's always my fault 'cause I'm nothing. You made that clear. Nothing. Worse for wear, but can't shed a tear, empty like the dumpster, heart pounding like a mother, staring at the hole in the wall next to my head, beginning to wish you were dead 'cause this life is nothing. With you, it's nothing. Redemption comes when I scream into the night, no longer fight or flight, naming the names of those who wronged me, taking notes from my memory. And then I finally lift my gaze and fix it past you. Because you're nothing. You hear me? Nothing. So this is one about my time in Guatemala and transitioning back to living in the States. And Viernes Santo is Good Friday. I am waiting for Viernes Santo. In Guate, there will be funeral marches, death, black hoods of anonymity. I want that. I want to disappear into the thick smoke of the incense, do penance, cargar Irlanda. Blame the choking sensation in my throat, the stinging eyes, the nausea on Viernes Santo. All these years, my own culture was just a memory in my mind, but now I am physically back in my culture, exiled out of my mind. Holy shit, that was me. I was there. Fuck, there was blood, always blood, men with guns, lots of guns, shots, screams, threats, rage, the stories, oh God, the stories that echoed what we found in the pits. The bodies, we were sifting little bones of little children thrown into pits. Disparos, nacuetes, saber donde, bullets and balazos, tear gas. This was peacetime, but not for Hardy or Chen, not for Barbara, not for us, not for Dina or Angela's daughter, not for the ones who are still unidentified, still in the montaña, buried or eaten by animals or thrown into rivers. Who will light candles for them? Who will pray for their souls? I marched, accompanied, translated, listened, and dug. Who wouldn't? We wanted to make it better, so I volunteered an acompañante, but I didn't know it would haunt me. I didn't know it would slap me in the face, tattoo me, grab hold, never let go. The stories clutch me around the throat, squeeze me, urge me, nunca más, never again. Except that they're not mine to tell. And I can't even find the tears, let alone the words. And then I slip back into this place here and pretend to be just a mom, just a teacher with suburban dreams. Mucho gusto. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Qué color es tu casa? But at night, I see my own children. Their round faces and dark eyes give away the past, and they make it real because I was there. And so was my husband. And we can't forget so that they can remember someday when they can handle it. Although I'm not sure I can handle it. I'm not handling it. Some days I jerk awake in a panic because I walked away, I left, I saved my own kids, my own family. And now I am in exile. In my country of birth, which long ago stopped being my country, despite what the papers say. Because papers will never capture one's heart. Sa introl, my heart is happy, except that it isn't anymore, but I don't know the words for that either. Not in Quechua. My heart was grounded in tortillas and frijoles, cenas típicas, plátanos con crema and hilachas, pachas on Thursday brought by the man on the bike. Now, my hometown punishes me in my mother tongue, forcing me to make sense of those past moments from another language, another time, another world. I am paralyzed, censored, completely out of touch with that person I scarcely remember, but it still bubbles up, making me want to puke because I don't know what else to do. I don't know where to put the nightmares. Pendiente siempre. Who might be listening? Who might be following the vigilance, constant vigilance, because the world is small and others have been found. I'm pathetically egotistic, thinking that they would come for us again because I'm not really important. Of course we're safe now. Por supuesto. All I ever did was observe, accompany, translate. Though when I did, the words and the feelings cut right through me. But they were never mine, not really. I don't think. I don't know. Perhaps I'm addicted. Adrenaline spiking, walking through the door, not knowing que pasará en la calle. Adrenalina por ver los muertos tirados. Cursing in Spanish, puta madre que cerote. Looking for a reason to unleash those words again, except that I'm a teacher, a mom, a gringa. Never forget, I'm born a gringa from there. No, from here. I'm here now, here, up here from the place that sent the weapons and the money, the strategies from Vietnam, napalm and torture and all sorts of tricks. Here I am now watching that hijo de puta from afar through tweets and photos, live stream on trial for genocide, and I feel stupid, helpless, cowardly. I can't make enough of a difference. I never could. We're here now, safe, except we don't feel it. We can't let go or heal. So I wait for Viernes Santo, Viernes de Luto, Viernes de Dolores to nurse my suffering because we are good chapines. O sea, I want to be a good chapina. Is it okay to feel chapina? Good Friday is where it's at. There may never be an Easter because I may never be able to feel an Easter. So then this next one is called Where I Go. The emotion jolts my stomach, my heart, my head, and I become caught in a sudden dense fog, locked in a semi-transparent shell. It unfurls, descends, grips me, my jaw clenches, my breathing is so shallow. Just enough air to keep me in the room, not enough to let me respond. My body freezes, I fade, float from a distance. My body becomes one thing and my mind another, and it doesn't matter what I tell myself to do. My muscles no longer respond. They clamp down as the voice in my head gets louder. But it has no effect because I am on lockdown. If I can't breathe, I can't cry, I can't feel. I see floating black patches in my eyes. I see the memories in my head through tinted glass. Outside of me, sounds are muffled and far away. I am acutely aware of the room itself, but not who's in it. Of the position of my body, but neither my body nor the room feels real. Until I dig my nails into my hand and bite the inside of my mouth, the sharp pain and bitter taste of blood keeps me from disappearing completely. My skin becomes hypersensitive. If you touch me, I will shatter, even though I don't know what that might mean, but I am certain that I will shatter. And this one I'm kind of excited about. It's called Lunar Chant. It was published with a group of women who write spiritual poetry. And this collection, this book is actually going to be sent next month up to the moon in a lunar capsule. There's going to be a time capsule where they've collected art from different artists, and this is one of them that's going to the moon. So pretty exciting. Lunar Chant. Life cycles, moon cycles, tides pulling and lifting, shaping, molding, keening and crooning me into the present, merging dreams and heightened wakefulness, bare feet ready to the ground, sensing the rhythm. The moment ripens and the meanings of my words are split open. And then she appears full and ripe above me. Every molecule of my body shakes in expectant anticipation of our dance. I feel the particles shift into the glow around me. We are one. My spirit finds the current and coils up into the newness of forever. I am fully awake now and flowing into the eternal, joining shyly in the here-ness. My hands feel the tug. My heart is nudged out of a victim's shell, and the casing falls away into the pit of was, while the pulse of we gathers our skirts up to join in the dance of now. I ride this surging energy in soft ferns of forgiveness, which I breathe deeply. The light shifts and the feathers of the quetzal bird are woven onto me. Emerald wings shape the path, ruby fires blazing in my breast. My feet stomp the outline of the circle that becomes my perfumed offering, whorls of Palo Santo and copal spiring into the journey. My senses are full, verging on too much, yet insistently pulling me deeper into the nightscape magic. I am now the river crashing, running down the jungle mountain past champas and bare-breasted women splashing each other while children suckle. I am the maizal filled with earth and corn, ripe with the color of ancestors, vines of frijoles snaking up my stalks to complete the dance. Beyond the cloud forest, howlers screech, and the current is fast. It lifts me above the volcanoes. My being throbs with energy. Frenzied particles continue to peel back layers of the no longer needed. Vestigial anger comes out in mesmerizing staccato beats, crashing into my tears until the next wave of grateful envelops them in solidarity as they are purged. I wriggle out of the unuseful, letting it fall below into ashes. I am running now, a jaguar alone on the mountain. I see the rocks and paths clearly in my mind's eye. I revel in the taste of discovered becoming. I trust myself to lift my steps and place my feet carefully down exactly where I need to go tonight. The thrill of a night run in the jungle intrigues me, feeds my empowerment. I depend on ancient spirits, knowing that the moon will point out just so steps whenever my feet falter. I realize I want to dance naked in the moonlight. I need my body to be anointed here. I know that cyclical magic happens inside me. I catch my blood and I soak it back into my garden, and the irises bow in gratitude at this extra kindness. I am soothed by the mundane spell of pouring my blood back into the earth. We nourish each other intimately, making communal love in the moonlight as only women can. We are the life givers, the grateful gatherers rejected by men out of fear. The crimson secret is ours, and I feel it each month. My ritual soothes away the trappings of an old life fueled by fear and shame. My blood is power as my body seeks the rhythm and guidance of a universe made for connections. The menstrual cord gently tethers me back into the earth while freeing me to explore the voices of the comadronas, ancient voices that guide me through the universe. More layers are shed as my understanding sharpens. Others misunderstand this dance, thinking that grace only comes from God-made man who purified the offering of body and blood. And the rest of that story is that he came from woman. Man spilled his blood, and his rebirth comes at the price of separation and hatred. True sacrament flows out of our intimacies. It is the Eucharist of sacred feminine flowing freely, preparing for new life in the dance of building up and letting go, offering it back into the earth each cycle. The mystical power of gratitude danced into the circle. The cycle welcomes feminine wisdom birthed in splendid internal darkness, guided by the sacred circle of light that pulls us together now in the rhythm of this story and the glow of the moon. Okay. So this one is much more recent. This is just from a short time ago. Tangible spaces. The floor is where I feel my center. And even when I can't touch actual earth, I name this desire to be rooted in the same linear plane with you. It's how I know that you, this, us, is safe enough. I wrap myself in my blanket of art, the tangible reminder of where I have already journeyed and where I have yet to go. You are not my guide because I've mapped out the inner constellations, but I fear the dark fog that seeps in to snuff out my sparks. I want to feel the energy of a fellow traveler, someone to steady my gait when I stumble over broken trust. Somebody who believes that I can go exactly where I need to be. In this quiet space, my words are braided together with feelings and sensations, and your presence soaks them in compassion. The braid becomes our ritual and my offering. It permeates the space between us, swirling into the bright notes of my art. My people's map was lost to me in the fog of dissociation, and I choke on the remnants of family secrets thrown into the corners of my being. My children's umbilical cords left behind and buried deep are a clandestine grave that now fertilizes kernels of corn that we no longer make into tortillas. We lost that map to genocide. All I own are instincts that rise from the echoed glow of past hearths, tended to by knotted hands that kneaded barley and rye, the ghosts who patted out the tortillas for my children. The braid that I weave in the space between us, that braid has become my offering and permeates the in-between, swirling into the bright notes of my art. Okay. Woven notes. Naked voices shaped by worn hands, weaving notes into the weft, a warp of solidarity, stretched tightly between disputed lands, stolen lands, an intimacy bound up in freedom, in labor pains and raised fists, adamant strides into a world refusing to be mapped out, unsettled hearts extracting themselves from festering inside the rule of law. Community spirals around us, insistent, obstinate, rejecting the gentrification of our identities. The percussive beats of wilderness push back, stamping out viral strains of independence, braiding us into tight baskets patterned with ancestral wisdom, while our voices rise like incense to meet the stars. This one is called Moving Silently. It's also a newer one. I move silently through curtains, heavy, weighted contradictions, cradling truths yearning to free the tension sewn into my bones. Tears drip through my veins, tentatively and then insistent in their search for an outlet. They mix with unoxygenated blood, a paucity of connection that longs for the remembered warmth of the first deep breath into a world of inherent expectation that was tied off and severed by inexplicabilities. I know the path I desire, and I see it through vapored lenses of those old talismans danced around a fire, sharply delineating where I was safe enough to feel. But now, echoed chispas burn clarity from past lives imprinted into the circle, pushing me into the labor of birthing new realities. Okay. So one of the things that I do as a therapist in my day job, I work within a framework in part called internal family systems, where we look at sort of these different parts inside us, this community inside us, and heal by unburdening them. So this is written sort of after I was in a training, and it's called Unattached Parts. And the premise is that all parts are welcome. And so it's sort of a more decolonized way of looking that we're not that we hold pathology, but that we carry these burdens. So I took that premise of all parts being welcome and then pushed back. If all parts are welcome, then why does the snaky darkness squeeze the blood from my heart, choking out my instinct to gasp for air? Or why do the nightmares continue on repeat, showing me where death stalks my inner courage, cornering it into oblivion? And what about the clandestine pit that defines the center of my being, where nothing exists outside of that rigid gray annihilation? Or the serpent that has haunted me for almost a decade, hovering near the riverbed, ready to strike me if I ever were to drop my guard among people? And why do the flames still taunt me from across the field, promising to erase my home, my champita, where the jungle rebirthed me into my truth, swearing to crush the umbilical cord that tethers me to cardamom-scented land? Or the howl of structural barriers that pins us under the wreckage of what community used to be before guns seduced us into raining bullets down like confetti? I cannot welcome the burdens that were never mine to own. So I have two more. I think we have time for both of them. They're fairly short. So this is called Liberation Manifesto. It's currently kind of one of my favorites. Objectivity is a miserable, fucked up justification for hierarchical bondage. It tears apart connection, chopping it up on a block to sell for profit. Colonized therapy parses out our humanity as if authenticity can be meted out, dealt around a table like a deck of cards, betting on who wins the pot, like there can still be enough to go around after the winner takes all. Fuck the limits they place on my love, poisoning the only free thing I have left to give, the only thing I try to keep unspoiled, and they capitalize on that by giving me the labels that give them job security while I drown in gaslit hallways and closets. They're passing the bucks around to gatekeepers who rubber stamp my worthiness to be in society, who decide how I get to feel, how I get to live, who has agency over my trauma and what new structural nightmare shapes my future. But today, I left my fucks at the door with the receptionist, and I claim this space for me, ripping down the gate between us, erasing the pretense. Because I know I matter, and the only healing I consent to is the one where we break free together. Yeah, so I just have one more. It's a short one. It's called Fuego, which is fire in Spanish. Smoke swirls in between the air around me, confirming that sustenance is close by. Simmering frijoles, tortillas browning on the comal. Fire kindles sensual intimacy while the waves of heat block shivery pain that otherwise hounds me. The crackle and pop of wood sap reminds me of seasons and cycles. Sprigs lengthen into trunks that fall are gathered and become the hearth where I slow dance with the universe. So that's what I got.
That is more than enough.
That was
Everybody,
amazing, Shannon. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
really, y'all open up your mics, show this lady some roses. Shannon, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh, 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 oh. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so again, mad thanks to the subject of our interrogation today, Shannon Lockhart. Um, for those of you who are interested in knowing more about Tesoro and what we do, our website is www.firesingers.com. Keep an eye on your Facebook, your Instagram, various streams here and there, because we have something planned every single week up until November the 17th, and then we'll be on hiatus until January of next year. But there's always something going on. We have myriad members, and they are making myriad changes in the world, poetically and otherwise. As a matter of fact, if you are interested and didn't get quite enough poetry, although that was absolutely fabulous, but if you just feel like you need a little bit more, our sister girl and sister Tesoro, Nazila Jameson, is doing another show as we speak. She's about probably halfway through, but you could probably, still get on the mic if you were cool. It is called the THEE Virtual Open Mic. You can find it on Facebook. Shannon, again, thank you so much. It's always so nice for me to be able to hear you all at length instead of for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. And I could not ask for anything better to sort of cap off the rest of my night. So for everyone who is still out there hanging with us, as I say every week, I am tired of fooling with people's time zones. So wherever you are in the world, have a fantastic day or a fantastic evening or a fantastic morning or a fantastic whatever seasons of the hours it happens to be. Again, Shannon, thank you so much. And you all take it easy. We will see you somewhere around the way.
Thank
Good
you.
night.